Right, so I haven't been dealt in yet, but I want to kind of get some reads. Like right away, we can see, yeah, okay, so this player likes to just flat the cutoff. They lead out over here, full pot, ace 6-5. I don't see why not. It's not like the in position player should have a ton of ace ace. It's not like they should have a ton of ace ace either. It's just kind of is what it is. And they're just like, yeah, just give me that. And I'm like, yeah, okay. I don't know. Not necessarily the optimal way to play it, but can't argue too much. I mean, who knows what they actually had. So then this player decides to call. I think in a PLO game, I know a lot of live players, like some very good live players, actually take strategies like this. They tend to be very deep. These players are actually quite deep, so they might be doing this with some hands that they don't really want to play 3-bet pots with. That they're gonna have an absurd SPR though here. Okay, so it does get raised and then call. Let's see if we get any information in terms of what they actually have. Not a terrible, but not a brilliant flop for the out of position player. I mean, they've got like a 20 plus to 1 SPR, these two players. I was going to say if it was limped, they would have had like almost like 100 to 1 stack to pot ratio. But, this is what we've got. I'd say a limper and a big blind caller are going to have a fair amount of 8x. The out of position player, their aces aren't thrilled, but aren't terrible on this board, and they're going to have some rundowns that smash this as well. So nobody really decides to bet here, and finally the button's like, yeah, okay, how about you just give me that, and everybody does. So not much more to say there. We're just going to kind of go through these, and when a spot comes up that's interesting, we'll discuss it. This spot doesn't look particularly interesting. Maybe make the deuce a 5 of diamonds, and now we can start talking. But that's just going to be a clear fold. They bet this very straightening board. I mean, there's a straight possible. There's two straights possible, king 10 and 10-8. And I feel like, are they supposed to range check this? I imagine they're supposed to range check this out of position. So not so sure about that. I'm in the small blind now with some cards that actually look like something. I don't think this is a hand I want to flat or squeeze. I like having these big cards. If it folded to me, I'd be delighted to open it. But I'm not even suited to the ace. Just going to let it go. And, flop. I don't know. I think cutoffs are basically supposed to be checking range or close to range on a board like this. But that doesn't mean they're check folding their range. And they did check fold though. In position player obviously can have set of jacks, set of queens, top two, some rappies. So I think I did go ahead. Yeah, let's go to the next hand. If all the hands are like this, it'll be a short stream. So call. I think this is the sort of hand that like some newer players get themselves in trouble with. They're like, oh, but it's double suited, and it's like, yeah, it's not a good hand, so we fold. Basically, two of the cards are decent, and they need other cards very close to them. It's not the deuce in the tray, so min bet here doesn't quite get it done, and now no, nobody wants to bet. So I think anybody can have straight draws here. That flop bet doesn't really narrow down ranges that much. It does more, I think, to narrow down the out of position players' ranges to like probably nothing very, very good. But then the turn check also says, well, the in position player doesn't have anything very, very good. However, the straights come in, so Queen Jack is likely until everybody checks. At which point, I'd say 6-7, maybe Jack 7 is the best thing we're gonna see. Probably gonna be taken down by like a 2 pair or there's the 6-7. So they had the under wrap on the turn, picked up the flush draw. We look at this and they had top pair and the under gutter on the flop, but it was $1. So they're like, yeah, whatever, it's $1. I'll pay $1. Really nice bluffing hand here from the cutoff. I mean, they're double blocking the nuts. Everybody checked to them. Seems like, and nice turn card for the player on the right. Like, it's kind of actually a more interesting hand than the way it played out. If these people played it a little differently. And even, pre-flop, the hand selection looks reasonable for players who like to not raise, right? Those are kind of on the better end of what some types of hands are going to be. well, this is clearly trash and we're going to treat it as such. Uh, three-way limp board looks very familiar. I mean, I guess anybody can have king 10 or 10-8. When it's an unraised pot, the stack to pot ratio is just so high, you probably shouldn't be looking to really get a lot of chips in with anything but the nuts, like even like the nuts with redraws. Royal flush becomes possible. Half pot bet. I feel like you could even bet straights here against the right opponents, but I think kind of any flush might be betting here. And, they get one through. If they have something like the ace of diamonds, I think they're going to... the ace of clubs, right? It was clubs. I don't know why I said diamonds. Did I have diamonds in my hand? No, I had spades. All right, it doesn't make any sense. All right, so I just fold this one. And there's a raise and a cold call and another cold call and a 3-bet. And, if we think about ranges, like, we saw these people limping pretty strong hands. So in general, we're going to see a raise and think, well, that's going to be a lot of ace-ace. And then we see a loser player and we see a raise and we might think, well, that's a lower proportion of ace-ace because they've got this really wide range. But from what we've seen, this player doesn't necessarily have a very wide raising range. So they might have even more ace-ace than normal. Now, there's been 2 cold calls, and this player opts to squeeze from the small blind, which should represent a very strong range, which should also have a lot of ace-ace. I would basically want aces or an ace blocker to make this play against somebody who I think might have a pretty narrow raising range, but, we'll see. Everybody wants to call. Okay, so here comes a flop. Stack to pot ratio here is like 1 to 1, like 1.25 to 1 or something, not even. It's very low. So basically, maybe like a quarter pot bet and then jam turn is an option. Also, I mean, if you have aces, there's wraps, there's backdoors. You probably could just jam it here and then obviously get it in very comfortably on any turn card. And they do go with this quarter-ish. Was that like 28% or something? Yeah, so they bet and they do get called, and now the turn's a 10. And I feel like this isn't the worst spot to just check with aces full, because you have like a half pot bet and it's just like, all right, go ahead and make something. But at the same time, against certain players, just rip it, because they're going to call with their draws anyway. They do rip it, and the other player's like, no thanks. So, I mean, if they had the aces full, which they probably did, making this play without that, I think would be fairly psychotic, leading into 3 opponents on this flop. I mean, maybe it wouldn't be that bad. They could have a hand like ace 10, ace king jack 10, stuff like that. So there's other hands they can have. But I just think from pre-flop, they should have ace-ace a lot. We might see some stuff from them later that contradicts that. And we have seen them in the other day's session review. Again, we get a raise and a fold, just garbage. And a nice big multi-way pot, 4 ways. My assertion that this player's raising range might be not super wide could prove to be false. Let's see if we see them show anything down. We get a bet and a call. How are overpairs doing on this board? Heads up, I think they're pretty happy. Stack to pot ratio is not too deep, but against 3 opponents, I don't think they should be super thrilled. And they did bet there, but now the turn is, I think, a little dicier. I mean, if you don't have any hearts, also any 7x, 7-8x, if you're going to have a 7, you're going to have an 8 pretty often. That doesn't make that much difference against like an overpair, right? I mean, unless you had some sort of flush draw. Goes check, check, and let's see. They both want to put in money here. So this was this player's pre-flop raising hand. They could have a hand like queen, queen. That makes a lot of sense. They could have decided to bet hearts on the river that they checked on the turn because the board was paired. Aces, I think that's a tough sell to just bet aces for value. They did have 7-8, so 9-8-7-5 with the suit. Not a terrible open from this spot. They get called by aces, so I sort of had it backwards, or maybe they had it backwards. You know, we do want to flat some combos of aces. I think this one's maybe a little bit too strong with like the 10 and a nut suit, right? If it was like the 10-4 was suited, maybe, or make the 10 and 9, maybe. I don't think it's necessarily terrible, but usually you want to be 3-betting this, especially when you're going to go like 20 ways. And then this call on the river seems very optimistic. I guess they're basically hoping for their opponent to just have like an ace of hearts and a few other cards, none of which are a 7 or a heart. So we will get involved in the action sooner or later, but for now we're just kind of collecting information on our opponents. You know, for the uninitiated, like, oh, I've got 2 good Holdem hands, but for PLO this is just not good. I've got 4 players behind me. Even from the button, do I even play that combo from the button? Tri-suit, maybe not, meaning like 3 diamonds. Raise, call. Oh, there was a call first. No, there wasn't, right? So cutoff raises, button calls, small blind calls, big blind calls. We get this juicy flop where I think people are going to have, you know, a lot of stuff. All the sets I think any of the players can have, really. Flush draws, straight draws, top 2 pair, even bottom 2 is going to be out there some. And nobody wants to bet. The turn, you know, King 10 got there. Ace should be feeling decent, but it would be kind of hard to bet unless you have a king or a 10 at least blocker. And now just nobody has anything, right? Maybe a hand like aces up is the best possible hand somebody could have. On the river, if you were like the small blind or the big, if you're like the big blind, I feel like you could bet aces up here for value. Less than that, I think, would be pretty optimistic. We're looking at 3s. Oh, deuces and 7s. The 4s don't beat that. But they did river a nice wrap, you know, the wheel wrap. So the tire protector, I don't know. So they have jacks and they have 9s, but they don't have jacks and 9s. And then kings and jacks, but not kings and jacks. So it looks like the deuce 7 tray is going to take it down. And, you know, we can kind of see what we're dealing with here. Like, these are the hands people are playing. The button and the cutoff seem all right, right? 9s with jack high suit and some connecting cards. Kings with a suit and a jack. The tri-suit I don't love. But if these players are going to come in behind you, I think just trying to like spike a set of kings is kind of reasonable. I'm not sure if I actually call that hand, but maybe I should. And then, you know, I mean, there's not much to say about deuce 7 3-3. At least 4-4-3-5 connects and has a suit. I think you probably want both suits to call there. But if you're a loose player, then that's not one of the worst hands you're going to get involved in. All right, this one, I think there might be some fireworks. Not from me, again. In a couple hands, we're going to maybe get something. Spoilers. So we have a call and then a raise and a call and a call and a fold and a call. So another one of these lovely 4-way pots. A little bit bigger this time because there was a caller before the pot size open, not open, but ISO. ISO, yeah. Keep calling it that. ISO coming from isolation, which is not what happened here and doesn't seem like what happens much in this game. All right, so bipolarizing should have all of the ace and nobody else should have much of it to speak of. Sets of 10s are possible for other players. 3 is pretty much a blank. So if you have a hand like ace 10, you should be feeling pretty good as you're blocking set of aces, blocking set of 10s. Set of 3 isn't super likely, but I guess possible with this crowd. We have a bet of half pot and a call, which I think some wraps with a pair can do, stuff like that. You don't want to be firing with nothing into this field, so I expect that they should definitely have something. But whether it is more of a made hand or a draw type thing, who's to say? They get 2 callers, and then the 4 is kind of like, depending on how your opponents play, if they're fairly reasonable, it's a pretty innocuous card, right? Deuce 5 isn't going to be super common. Maybe someone can have like ace queen deuce 5 double suited or something that they call with. However, we did see the button call with 7-3-3 deuce, I think. So deuce 5 is squarely in their range. The thing is, when deuce 5's in someone's range, like all the other hands are, so there's never going to be a really high frequency of it. But 2-4-5 was a wrap on the flop, and it got there. I would keep betting with top 2 or top set, and they just lead out. So they lead out, and they're like, yeah, maybe I have deuce 5. You don't know how I play. Fair enough. And this person's like, I don't know. I guess they're still repping aces or something. At this point, if you had a set of aces with like the nut flush draw, I feel like calling is the play. You've got nice, robust equity. Here, if you have a different kind of set of aces, I don't know. I'm not sure about this against players who, I don't know. I don't know. I'm just not sure. And I mean, I guess they could have, oh, they barely had anything left. Yeah, so if you have a set of aces and not that, then I think this play makes a lot of sense. They're basically just like, hey, get out. Let's see what they have. They did have the set of aces. They don't have the diamonds, right? And I think that matters. I think, the point is that they have the second nuts, but they don't have a super robust version of it, meaning, they are blocking the straight draw up top. They have one diamond blocker, but they don't actually have diamonds. They don't have the ace of diamonds. So if the player behind them did have the ace of diamonds, they could even maybe build a side pot and get called by like ace x of diamonds, or play, like ace 10 even, something like that. And a set of tens, I think, I don't know, maybe is going to fold when you do that. But the other player did have the legendary 2, 3, 4, 5. So they flopped a wrap and a pair, made the nuts, and made the second nuts on the river, but it's still good for the pot. So yeah, you just have to have an idea of how your opponents play, I think, and we have an idea of that now. So again, we just get we get a very festive looking hand, right? A very very holiday spirits, red and green. King high suit, 9 high suit, 4-5 connects, 9-5 connects, and king 9 connects. Yeah, no, we're not going to play that hand. We get a call, and this flop, maybe the in-position player can bet it with a decent frequency, right? They are going to run into, I mean, from what we've seen, like any of the sets, the big blind defense, I think, is going to have more jack-jack than like 6-6 or 4-4. But they can have kind of like, 7-6-6-5 type hands, which are really going to enjoy this flop. But the in-position player checks it back. If you have like bad aces, I think this is a very reasonable spot to check back. Or if you have like some back doors and don't want to get check raised. Spades come in the front door. The out of position player leads out. Pretty reasonable chance for them to have something like a nut flush draw. They can have king king as well. They lead out. I don't think they're going to have a lot of ace of spades without another spade, because when you call out of position, you're usually going to be more suited up, right? So, and multi-way. So I think it's going to be hard for them to find bluffs. And that's a thing to think about, I think. The future is like, are there a lot of offsuit combinations, right? And when it's an ace, it's like, well, if the nut were like a king, if say this was the ace of spades on the turn, I think a solo king of spades is more likely, because king king not suited to the king makes more sense than ace ace not suited to the ace. I mean, because the thing is, all right, if you're going to have a king that's offsuit, it's more likely to be because you have king king, right? Whereas, although you're going to 3-bet a lot of your suited kings, I think. That's interesting. When a king is the nuts, I think there's going to be more bluffs available to the out of position player, to the cold caller, and maybe fewer flushes. Whereas when the ace would be the nuts, I don't think there's going to be a ton of calls there that have, the naked ace of spades, because the hands that would most likely have that, like if you're going to play the ace of spades, you're going to play it with another spade, and if you don't, you're going to play it with another ace, but then you're going to 3-bet almost all the time. So it's hard to have just like a random ace of spades here, I think. I don't know if I'm overthinking that, or if that's kind of like a significant thought that I'm having just now, but it feels significant. All right, so this looks like a pot. There's a raise, a call, a call. I kind of feel like this is close. I don't know. Maybe I'm too tight, but I went ahead and folded. I do have a nut flush draw. I have ace queen jack, so I have 3 big cards. The 5 is like the least bad wheel card, I guess. It's better than like a 6 or like a 7. If you make it a 10 or a king or a 9 even, I'd say I'm probably playing this. Although multi-way, single suited. I think we lose a fair amount of value. I don't know. I did end up folding this and, you know, flop decent, but nobody seems very interested. Turn even better, and then nobody wants to bet. And, you know, let's look at the types of hands that I happen to be up against, which is isn't going to tell us like what I should or shouldn't do, but it's just, here's what happened. Double suited 10s and 8s, that's pretty nice. Gotta say, I think they're gonna call my 3-bet if I go ahead and 3-bet that combo. And then here, pretty junky hands. They did make kings and jacks, so good for them. And then 8, 7, 6, 6, pretty reasonable hand, except I think you probably want to be double suited to flat this. Multi-way, you know, the button's nice to have, but this seems like not a terrible hand for a loose player to have. So, now the next hand, I get a similar hand, except, you know, I'm double suited. So, I go ahead and raise. When one player calls, I'm usually going to play my cutoff range in the button. And, you know, this is actually a successful isolation raise, which is hilarious. We don't see a lot of that. Generally, we're getting 3- and 4-way pots. But I do get heads up, and they check it to me. Here I've got a pair, I've got a gut shot, I've got a backdoor not very nut flush draw. This does seem like it's in the range of hands this player is playing, right? Most players, you look at this and go, they probably missed this flop. But this player, I don't know. I think they could have it. I think I bet like a third pot here, and they folded. And I'm okay with that. I think they're not going to play very aggressively against me, so I might be able to like bet third pot and then get to showdown basically, or get to the river that way. You know, I've got some stuff, but not a lot of stuff, and you know, so I don't hate it. Pretty junky hand. We're going to fold. There's a call, a raise. All right, we've seen, you know, these players play some hands. Anybody can kind of have some king here, although I think the raiser maybe would have the most of it because everybody else decided to come in, you know, very passively. Now on the turn, there's a cornucopia of draws, tons of straight draws, lots of delicious wraps, and 2 flavors of flush draw. So they bet, and everybody wants some. The river completes basically everything except for the clubs and the little straights, right? Ace 10's a straight, 9 10's a straight. Hearts came in, you know, top 2. There's a new version of top 2 pair. Half pot bet here pretty much should represent a flush, right? I mean, I don't know what else you're doing. You could have some bluffs with the ace of hearts, and I would say this player certainly can have some things like that. They get to take it down without much of a fight. All right. You know, not very good with the tri-suitedness. We're gonna fold. We have seen this player raise a fair amount. There, you know, I do wonder what like the VPIP of some of these players is. I could like try and manually track it, but you know, I'm not. Queens and jacks and aces and 3s. Oh my, 4 pair beats 3 pair, right? Those are just the rules. So queens and jacks and aces and trays are going to take it down. Of course, they had aces and queens, and this player had aces and 6s, and, you know, queens are bigger than 6s. So, yeah, we already watched that one. This looks like a raise. Duh! Really? So, okay, I remember my thoughts in this hand. We're not suited to the ace, and like a jack and a 6 sucks together, and an ace and a 6 suck together. So in terms of ace jack jack combos with a single suit, if we're ever folding a combo of ace jack jack single suit, this is the combo. And I'm not sure whether we are folding any combos of ace jack jack single suit, but we are in the low jack. And so, you know, that's the worst position on a 6 max table. And I think this is maybe okay. Especially with very loose players behind. That's another component, is just we're not going to just like get it through because we got blockers, right? Like, people blocking what? Like, there's still cards left in the deck. They don't care about our blockers. So yeah, I made this kind of tight fold here. And then, I mean, I guess maybe my blockers were good. Nobody had anything. And they say, oh, no, I have something. Don't worry about folding. Okay. Jack 6 6 4. This doesn't look better than the last one, that's for sure. But everybody, yeah, see, so I'm not blocking an ace, so everybody wants to play. That's how it works. So 4 ways, we're going to have 20 plus in the middle. That's a flop. That is not a good flop for ace ace unless it's ace ace 8 6 with or without, you know, hearts and spades. Ace ace 8 8 with like hearts, I think I could get on board with you know, doing some wagering, some strategic wagering, but I think, yeah, oh, okay, so they're just like pot, which is most PLO players' favorite word. I think having a donking range, like betting into the pre-flop raiser on a board like this, makes all the sense in the world. This sizing, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, got everybody to fold. If you have a hand like 8-8, whatever, it's a reasonable bluffing hand here. The only thing is there are going to be so many draws, so I'd kind of want like 8s with a heart draw and have a sort of semi-bluff, and or like, you know, a jack or a 10 where I could turn the nuts with a straight as well. So I think it's pretty easy to come up with bluffs on a board like that. You can just go with the blockers, you know, just be like, do I have the hand that makes it hard for them to have the hand where they want to put money in? Yes. Okay, let's put some money in. I have a garbage hand, of course. There's a call, there's a raise, there's a call, there's a call, there's a call. Another one of these delightful 4-way pots. There's 17 in the middle after rake. They take 1 out of every 18 pennies out. So they took 100 out of those 1,800 pennies. 2, 4, 6. Who do we appreciate? Not the rake. Not the rake. Not the rake. Okay. We get a check and a check. You know, this maybe is a board where you're going to check to the pre-flop raiser a lot, as 3-5 is very different from like 8-6 in terms of the likelihood that any given player has those cards to like flop a straight, right? So I don't know, like, are aces gonna bet off in here? Like, can they go third pot? Maybe ace ace 5 or something like that, or having, you know, 3 aces and 3s or something like that, where we're blocking some stuff. If you want to block some stuff, kings can be pretty happy here, as I don't think anybody's that likely to have the nut straight, and now king should be super duper happy. Even a 6, like aces, I might call with aces here. Against this player leading out, maybe not into 3 players, but you know, I think aces are going to be good here a fair amount of time at the time, at least until this person bets. But when they do, I don't know, maybe still, maybe, I don't know. Okay, this is the hand that I think I played a little non-standard. We get a call, we get a raise, we get a call. And this isn't a great combo of kings. I have 3 hearts. My 7 and 6 do connect, though. That's nice. And I'm going to be multi-way for sure, right? But look at the lineup. All these players like to open limp. All these players play very questionable holdings. I think king is going to be a great opportunity to, you know, try and flop top set. I could flop a set with a straight draw, with a flush draw. I could flop a straight draw and a straight draw with a flush draw. There's a lot of decent ways this hand can progress. And so I think calling in this lineup, I think, makes sense. In a tougher lineup, or if it weren't like a limper, if it was like a raise and a cold call from like tough players, maybe you just let this one go. But here I think this is playable. And I flop not a lot, right? Like I flop an overpair, but in PLO, an overpair 4 ways with like no real draws, that's not a very good hand. So we're basically just giving up. But now there's a straight on board, and I'm double blocking the bigger straight. I would rather have queen here, but I just decided, you know what? You don't have the nuts. I've got the nuts, or I've got the nut blockers. So is this sizing big? Should I save this play for when I have queen? Maybe. Am I going to bet this big with like king-queen? Probably, because there is a flush draw. There's straight draws. There's a lot of, you know, pretty obvious 2-pair combos people can have. There's a very annoying sound. Hopefully you cannot hear it, but I can. And it sounds sort of like dentistry. I don't know. So anyway, you know, curious on opinions on the bet size, and in terms of, whether firing this into 3 opponents makes sense. I feel like there are a lot of pots where when there's a really obvious nut straight and somebody bets pot, they just win in these games, right? It's like you don't get really tough defense in spots like these. And it's hard for somebody else to have a nut straight because I got 2 kings. So, and also another thing is like nut straight was open-ended straight draw on the flop. And it just didn't feel like, if anybody had that with anything else, I think they're betting here fairly often. So, I don't know. I like it. But, 3/4 pot, maybe, fine. Whatever. I might be skewing towards the bigger bet sizes when I don't have it, and the slightly smaller when I do. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. Okay, there's a call from this loose player in the cutoff, and I've got a suited ace, I've got a king, I've got 6-8 which connect. I'd rather have like 5-7 maybe, because then the ace and the 5 connect, but I think this is worth a raise. I'm gonna get heads up more often than in a lot of other scenarios, because this big blind has been the tightest player at the table so far. Lunar also, I think, has been playing pretty reasonably, and I mean, not counting myself. And then, like, bipolarizing seems at times reasonable. Sort of undetermined, maybe a little wild. I flop the straight. By the straight, I mean a straight, the bottom straight, the nut low straight. But there's only one other straight, and that's Jack 8. And, there are going to be a lot of Jack 8 combos that they're going to raise coming in because they're going to have like some kind of a rundown. I also have a backdoor nut flush draw. Technically, I have a backdoor larger straight draw, right? A Jack and a Queen could come and I could make Broadway. So I check though, because I don't think I really want to just like start betting this second nut straight. And, then maybe I get raised and I guess I fold. But here, maybe I can induce some bluffs from like the overwrap, like King, Queen, Jack, right? I mean, that hand's actually doing very well. So it's not like I'm trying to get them to put money in the pot. So I'm curious, how well is that doing? They've got 9 plus, well, it's 8 because I have a king plus 3 8s. Is that right? 3 plus, what was it, 8, so 11 outs twice. Pretty close to flipping. But I think I might be ahead of that. They do bet 3/4 pot, and I was like, all right, I feel like they don't have to have the nuts here every single time. And I do have some kind of reverse implied odds, right? Except for the fact that, I mean, yeah, that's true. But I also feel like I can make some better hands. If I didn't have the nut flush draw, I don't know. Like, I don't think I just check fold this on one street. But, like, I have in spots like this. And now a flush draw shows up. I am, partially blocking it. In terms of calling combos on the flop, I might not want to be blocking all these backdoor flush draws. I think that probably doesn't matter too much in terms of what my opponent's thinking. I check, and they bet again, and again it's this 3/4, and I'm like, now I can't improve, right? I have what I have, and, but again, it's like, I feel like I've shown so much weakness, and I do have an 8, which is blocking the bigger straight. If I had like 6-7 and the board were 8-9-10 instead of 7-9-10, then I would be totally unblocking, the Queen Jack, and it would be a bit harder of a call. I think I can call one more time, and the river's a 7, which looks pretty gross if they were, kind of semi-bluffing with a set, like if they had like 9-9-8-8 or something, or 7-9-8, 9-8-7-4 or something silly, then they've gotten there. But so I check it again though. I think briefly about like, can I turn my hand into a bluff? And it's like, no. I'm not getting this person to fold a jack high straight, and I don't have any relevant blockers, right? If we had a hand like 10-9-8, Queen 10-9-8 maybe, right? So I had the open ender on the flop and top 2. That would actually be a good bluffing candidate here on the river to try and get a straight to fold, as I'd be blocking a lot of the full houses. Might not be a good play against a particular player, but they decide to check it back, and we win. And they did have the open-ended straight draw plus an overpair. Queen Jack Jack deuce tri-suit. this is what we're working with here. They only had 7 outs, right, on the flop. They needed a queen or an 8. And I had one of the 8s. But, my hand, I think, is underrepresented. This is basically the best hand I'm ever going to have at this point. Sure, sometimes maybe checking a hand like Jack-8 in this spot makes sense. But, I'll be honest, I'm not doing that a lot. If we have just a totally bare Jack-8, though, I have done that. And then something like this happened, and then somebody jammed, and I might have folded, right? But, so I do think having some straights in our check call range is powerful, is important, and it certainly worked out this time. Whether it was the best play or not, it worked out. So, maybe I could have gotten more chips in by playing more aggressively against their hand. They would have been like, oh, I have an open-end straight draw, an overpair, go, go, go. But I think against a range, that would not have been fantastic. All right, looks like a hand I'm going to play, but the 4, let's see, do you call this or do you fold? I fold, net life. I am suited to the ace, and that's sort of why I'm thinking about cold calling here sometimes. This player has been fairly reasonable from what I've seen, and this player not super reasonable. So, and then kind of reasonable player in the small blind, not super reasonable player in the big blind. Double suited, I would definitely continue this hand and make the jack an 8, 10, or king. Or, ace, queen, or jack, and I'm definitely going to play. So, I did fold sort of on the tighter side. Now, this player decides to go for the 3-bet, and let's see what happens here. Everybody comes along. So if I had made that card a 9 and cold called, of course, if they 3-bet, then I don't even know. That's the thing about cold calling. There is always a chance someone's going to call 3-bet behind us, and nobody wants any of this. And then this player's like, I want all of it. So they did check to the razor on the flop. The stack to pot ratio with these players is like 3-1, and the player on the right over here about 3-1, right? A little less than 3-1 with this player on the left, more like 2.5-1. But and then like 1-1 with Lunar. So, in terms of I guess here if they get called, they can jam river just about against this one player and not quite against the other. Kind of interesting, what hands are they going to play this way? Are they going to play Jack-Jack this way? Are they going to play a 9 this way? I think a 9's reasonable, where, 9 or Jack-Jack seems certainly possible. I wouldn't be surprised if they had some kind of double suited, they could have some rundowns that just have Jack-9, right? Queen Jack-10-9. So that want to call before the flop and then call again. Not a ton of hands are going to cold call twice, right? But there are hands. All right, I've got a pretty trashy hand. I fold, and there's a board that I think there's going to be some leads. You're going to really want something to go with your aces if you're going to bet here. They're going to bet and get called, and kind of brick turn, right? 4-3 deuce was the diaper on the flop. But I don't think you have to worry about that too much. The 8 did bring some straights. That would have been maybe pair on a straight, flush draw on a straight draw type deal. But nobody really wants any. I'm going to call it 2 pair tops is going to win this. Probably 1 pair, maybe even an overpair. Okay, 9s and 5s. And an overpair. So an overpair did win, but not because they had the overpair, because they had the 9s and the 5s. I don't know. How else are you going to play it, right? They were double suited. Seems pretty reasonable all around from these folks. And on the the in position player, they had a gutter and they were blocking clubs and diamonds to some extent. So I guess I don't know. I probably check this combo back, but I'm not sure if that is optimal or whatnot. All right. How does this hand go? Decent cards, but not really a good hand, right? Ace, Jack, 10, 5. There's a lot of ways that could be suited up that we can play it, but the bottom 3 cards suited, no. You know, and so we have a limper, we have a attempted isolation by this player who does not go full pot. So that's just, I don't know. They go, I guess, is this like 3/4 pot or half pot or something? I think it's 3/4. It's a little odd. Okay, whatever. No big. Call. Both blinds folded, which is rare in this game, but these are the more like, that's basically them or the two of us are the only ones who are both going to fold. Very, you know, wet, connected board. The pre-flop raiser is going to have some rundowns, going to have some nut flush draws. I think having a leading range in this spot is logical, and I think checking range or close to range as the pre-flop raiser is logical. So none of this doesn't make sense. In position isn't just going to like bet all the time, as the pre-flop raiser should be check raising some of the time. The out of position player, while they could lead some of their good hands, they can also check raise some. Now on the turn, the 9-10 gets there. There's two flush draws. There's still whatever straight draws were possible before, as well as, you know, the 69 and the 64. I think if you want to lead here, you want a draw and blockers, probably like a 10 or a 9. Although, like, I don't know, the jack isn't really that scary, right? So maybe you don't even need blockers, maybe you just need equity. And they do lead out for half pot, and they get called by the button. So I would say out of position can have some 10-9, but if they have some 10-9 and chose this sizing, I think they probably want to have some sort of robustitude to their equity, because it's such a wet board. So many bad things can happen. Like if you had 10-9 of clubs and, you know, it's not the best card. They do bet again, and so reasonable chance that they made a flush on the end, that they either did or didn't have a straight on the turn. In position, probably didn't have a straight. They probably had either spades or some other straight draw, or like a 2-pair that was like, although maybe this player calls river with 2-pair, not sure. This hand is basically nothing happens. Someone calls, we have garbage, we fold, call, and yeah, somebody's going to bet this flop. Somebody's going to bet this turn. Nobody's going to bet. Nobody's going to bet, and we're going to see a showdown with queens. Queens have to be... Oh, there's a flush. And there's kings. Okay, queens were in last place. 10, 4 deuce is going to take it down, which was the big blind. So I'm not throwing any shade at them. Look at... So look at these hands, though. Ace, queen, queen, 5 with nut diamonds. Ace, king, king, 4 with nut hearts and second nut diamonds. And I will just remind you that this was the pre-flop action. Call, check. So, you know, in the category of like maybe raise when you got it. I mean, not that they necessarily would have won, because they probably would have gotten into defense from 10-10 4 deuce, who would have been like, you can pry this flush draw out of my cold dead hands, and like maybe you don't even want to see bet this board. But yeah, so maybe some limp re-raises going on from KK4A. I don't know. All right, the next pot is slightly larger and probably won by a much worse hand. You know, pair of sixes, some connectors, one suit, no thanks. We're in the L1, low jack -1. And we got a limper, we got a raiser, we got a caller, we got a caller, we got a caller, we got a caller. 5-way pot. Delicious 5-way pot. Queen jack 7. Okay, so if you're the pre-flop raiser, you really want a piece of this to fire into 4 opponents. If you're out of position with something like a set of queens, perhaps, or some monster draw, I think you don't want to sit there and go, oh, I'll just check and hope the pre-flop raiser bets. Like, they're going to check pretty often against 4 opponents on this soaking wet board. So check, check, check. And the pre-flop raiser's like, what is going on? Oh, it's so annoying. We have to wait for people to leave the table. Like, that's an action in the replayer. Like, it's like, hold on, pause the action. How much would you like to buy in for? Red or green? Green. Chips. And you're sitting there like, can I play my hand? So anyway, they bet the flop. They bet about 3/4 pot, a little bit less than that. You know, maybe 2/3 roughly after, before rake, right? They probably took like $1.25 out of this pot already. What's this going to represent? I mean, if you've got top set, you probably want to bet it. If you have middle set, you probably want to bet it. Nut flush draw with straight draw, like ace king jack 10 with nut spades. There's gonna be a lot of combo draws that you can have. Aces with nut spades and like a gutter maybe, or ace ace queen with the ace of spades, maybe stuff like that. They do get called, and a fold and a fold. So now we're heads up to the turn, right? What's this person calling with? 4 cards? I don't know. I mean, we've seen some stuff. They've played some hands so far. So, um, your guess is as good as mine. I mean, they could have some 2 pair hands. They can certainly have like all the draws, right? Any of the draws. So the turn's a deuce, which is like the brickiest brick that ever has bricked, except that it brings in a backdoor flush draw. So now the board's like, it's like, oh, this board was wet, and then we just pour some more wetness on it. Okay, anyway, they check. So if you've got top set, you probably want to keep your foot on the gas. I'm thinking probably bet very large. Like you're not trying to just like piece it off. If on the other hand you have a hand like can you have both flush draws? You can't have both flush draws, can you? Yeah, no, you can't. Well, you can obviously, but if you have top set, right? If you have top set, that's 2 cards that are not spades and can't both be diamonds, so you can't have a set and a double flush draw. But you could have like top 2 with a double flush draw and like a gutter. There are, something that's got like really robust equity. Like say you had that ace queen queen 10 nut spades, so royal flush draw top set. Sure, somebody could have diamonds, and there are straight draws that could come in. Something like that, I think you can go with the smaller bet sizing. I don't know how often you're really going to use smaller bet sizing for bluffs here. I mean, you could and then try and have a river barrel. But so they go the big size. There's a call. The river pairs the board, and there's a check. And like I feel like they're just gonna jam with quads and get a fold from like ace king 10 with spades. No, they check it back. All right, so like what wants to check here? They must have had a huge draw with spades and just been like, there's no way I'm winning this with the bluff on the river. I guess. Or maybe they could have a hand like 7-7 that got kind of scared. Jack. Okay, they had Jack, and they made 3 different flushes. Jack 10, Jack 8, and 10-8. Those might be the 4 best hands possible. And yeah, so there was a queen out there. They had a combo draw, king 10, so the open ender, 10 high flush draw, block. I don't know. Do we bet this? Do we bet this on the flop 5 ways? Like heads up, I get it, but 5 ways it feels like kind of optimistic on this board. I mean, I don't know if you're bluffing or trying to get value there on the flop, or on the turn, I guess is like a bluff, but you're not really getting better hands to fold, right, from this player. So anyway, interesting hand. King Queen was at least the 5th best hand that either of these players could make. They beat Jack 10 with a Jack of Hearts and Jack 8 with a 8 of Hearts. Okay, where are we? We've got some. Let's just sort of speed through the smaller pots. Queens, free flop, cool. Check. They bet and call. My hand just has nowhere to go. Like I have queens, reasonable chance it's best right now, but fairly wet board. I have a 3. What's that really doing for me? There's just nowhere to go. I didn't have a queen of diamonds even, so only one of my queens is going to be any good. We get a bet and a fold, and that's that. Next hand, pretty good Badoogie. The question is, do you want to break and pitch the 10 and draw to like the nuts, or do you want to live with the 10 perfect? Either way, you fold in Pot Limit Omaha, and here's flop. Someone's gonna bet, someone's gonna fold. Okay, yeah, I mean they can have some king X, they can have Jack. I guess they can have some draws that they want to kind of bluff with, ace queen Jack 10 or something. I don't know. I thought this was almost interesting, where like I'm double suited, I have a 3-card rundown, I don't really want to spot my opponent's a card where this 3 is just, it gives me a suit, but it's kind of useless, so I fold. In like a home game or like a setting where it's like, where it feels like you do want to play those kind of cuspy hands, not even for like value or for EV, but just kind of just be in a few more pots and not be like the nittiest nit to ever knit. I think playing it is probably pretty close to neutral EV. And if you're just brilliant post flop and your opponents are not, I could see how it could even be played profitably. I would go for an overlimp actually if I was going to play it. I mean, there's 4 players limping ahead. One thing I will say though is a 10 high flush draw and a 9 high flush draw not as powerful against 5 opponents or even 6 opponents. So here's this flop. You know, what happens here? I think, did I have the under on? No, whatever, who cares? There's a bet, and one person calls, and now the straight draws have gone down in value as the board is already paired. No flush draws for anybody to have, so you will call. Turns out to be lying with their screen name. You will not call. You will fold, and garbage. You know, little flop, dinky flop. No one wants to bet. No one wants to bet. Very exciting hand. They had a straight draw, and they had a pair of 2 pair, which got worse on the turn and worse on the river, but still was good for everything. All right, we've got a couple more big ones, and once we get through those, I'll probably just call it there. So another one of these delightful 4-way pots, you know, 9-6 deuce. Not like super, you know, jazzificating for the pre-flop raiser. They're pretty much just going to be like, yeah, you're going to need to hit something here. I mean, aces might be good, but you want to be at least like blocking some of the draws if you want to. I mean, aces 4 ways. Not to say that this person has aces all that often necessarily, but you know, the raiser has what the raiser has. There were 2 callers, right, and then a raise. That's why it was 550. Straight got there on the turn, but nobody seems particularly interested. It seems like everybody's got cards with pictures on them. And what's going to win here? I think like not even a 9, like an 8, or like somebody's going to have a pocket pair. Okay, there's the 8. Can anyone beat an 8? Ooh, a 6. Wow, they made trips. Like in general, you can't value bet this on the river, but I kind of feel like here you could. On the turn, also, they had the nut flush draw, but no blockers for the straight, so I think playing it passive makes sense. I think they could have gotten a call from aces, which, you know, again, not betting this flop, totally reasonable. I think with aces against 4 opponents, you know, they were ahead, and they might not have faced too much resistance. They probably would have gotten called by this nut flush draw, who then would have gotten there. And then these 10s, actually, this is a nice bluffing hand on the turn, right? I mean, you have a heart, which, you know, blocks some potential continues. And, I mean, you have an overpair, which might be good, but I think you can just kind of shut it down and be like, yeah, just give me the pot now. Pot was pretty big, right? I mean, there were 2 limps and a raise and 3 callers. So that's a pot worth winning. That's a pot worth winning, you know? It's not like you don't need to care about those pots. All right, we have 3 ways to the flop. The big blind bets out. They could have anything, just anything. Probably not aces, but like maybe, I don't know. Lots of draws. The 10 can make some new top 2 pairs, and you know, queen 10 is a thing, but it's not a thing any of these people have. Looks like a huge draw on the turn, nut flush draw, open-ended straight draw. Maybe huge is overstating it, but very large draw on the turn. They let out with a nut flush draw, and they got called by the second nut flush draw, who binked at 10, which is good for all the monies. All right, here's the biggest pot of the session. You might be looking at, oh yeah, I think I actually played this hand. So there's a call, and I decide to raise. In this position, I'm not super confident in this play. Like, I feel like it's maybe a little light. If you make a 10 a king, sure. But, you know, I do have a king high suit. I have a pair of 10s, and I have good connectivity amongst my hands. There's going to be a lot of broadways I can make, or Broadway draw. You know, I can flop a Broadway draw, or like a jack 9 or an ace jack on the flop would be quite nice. And I can flop like some like jack 10x where I flop an open ender, or like a flush draw with a set. So I do raise, and we get this four-way thing, which is one of the reasons I don't love this as much, because I am going to get a lot of multi-way pots. And if I am, my standard for being in the pot is actually a little bit higher, but it's okay. And I do have position. I mean, if I'm going to get three callers, let it be these three. And the flop comes ace high, and it goes check, check, check. And like, I like betting here some, right? But I mostly want to have an ace just to block a lot of continues. My tens are blocking some continues. My king, queen of diamonds, all my suits match these suits. So this could potentially be a good bluffing candidate at some point, but as of yet, not so much. And now I turn this wrap. Oh, okay, I remember how this hand goes now. I turn the wrap. I have a club blocker, but no clubs. And there's a bet and a call and a call. So everybody's in. So if we look at the pot odds, I'm getting basically 5-1, right? There was pot, half pot, half pot, half pot. That's 2.5 to half. That's 5-1. So this is just a math problem, right? I mean, the first question is like, can I bluff here? Like, I pretty much am betting my sets of aces on the flop, I think. Like, unless I have like ace, 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 8, 7 with like spades and diamonds. Like, maybe that's a combo I can check because it's just so robust, right? But basically, I don't think I can really rep much here. I just have a very clean draw to a bunch of nuts, which could be chops, but the fact that I have 2 tens means it's going to be harder for someone else to kind of chop with me, right? If I make a straight requiring a 10, like if I hit an 8 or I hit a king, right, then I'll use one of my 10s. So I want to count out. There's 3 kings, there's 3 queens, there's 2 10s, and there's 4 8s. But so what? 3, 3, 2, 4, right? So that's 12 out. But a king, a queen, and an 8 are going to be clubs. And I'm feeling like not super good if a club comes when there's a bet and 2 callers. So I'm going to regard it as 9 outs, right? 9 outs to the stone cold nuts, which I could chop with, but I could also not chop with another player, right? On those cards. And if a club comes and it checks to me, like there's a non-zero chance I'll win, but it's very close to 0. So 5-1 with 9 outs is just a very clear call, right? There would need to be over 50 cards in the deck for it to not be a call. Maybe I want to discount those 9 outs because they might be a chop some of the time, but at the same time, like some of those outs, maybe I've got positive implied odds. Let's say a king of, let's not go with the king. Let's say a queen comes, right? And then king 10's the nuts and someone has 10-8, they might pay me off. Maybe somebody turned a set of jacks, they might pay me off. So I think it's definitely possible for me to have positive implied odds. I certainly don't have reverse implied odds because I'm not putting another dime in the pot unless I have the nuts, right? I'm not hitting like a queen of clubs on the river and being like, oh, well, they only bet 3/4 pot. I mean, if they bet like minimum, okay, I'll call that. But, $1, that'll be fine. So I call, and the river is not exactly what I was hoping for. I do pick up diamonds, should we have an ocean, but not even nut diamonds. So, I'm done with the hand, but they are not. They decide to go pot, and I think this next player jams. Yeah, that's what happens. So we get out of the way, and we're like, you two have fun now, you hear? They had ace-ace, and they flatted pre, check flop, flop checks through, and then the turn was their money card because this person had jack-jack. And I gotta say, I'm feeling pretty good with jack-jack there in this pot, right? The pre-flop raiser checked back the flop, flatted the turn, which was very wet, and, so I'm not worried about me if I'm them, and nobody else should have ace-ace very often. So, I'm not going to throw shade at jack-jack here for doing this. Aces, I mean, it was non-standard, but it got the results. So, not too much to say about that. I mean, this player obviously plays a really wide calling range, right? Meaning they call with some hands like 7-3-3 deuce, which is most people fold that. And then they call with ace ace, and most people raise that. You know, they have. It's not even like these are like really bad aces. It's like aces with a suit, and the queen and the 8 and all this stuff. You know, there's a little bit of connectivity. So anyway, it certainly paid off for them. So you know, hey, congratulations. They are the proud owner of this $200.82 pot. All right, I'm going to call it there. I think that's you know, the most entertaining note I can end on. Thanks for watching. I don't know if this is on YouTube, hit the buttons, you know, the buttons.